Now we've seen a few examples of how we can use if statements within a program to build out different scenarios, different decision trees, and you can see just about how handy and extremely useful it can be if you want to implement business logic or build out a series of events that are complex in the way that they get triggered. And you go from having a basic program that does the same thing all the time, having a program that reacts to a variety of different circumstances. Okay. And my hope with this next program is that you can start to get more comfortable writing your own code and specifically taking advantage of this new tool that you have available, which is if statements, right? So follow along, pause if you need to take your time, but try and see if you can come up with your own solution. Okay, you can compare it with mine as we go along, line by line, or as you wish. Don't worry too much if you don't get it right the first time, or if you get stuck with syntactical errors. Just try to write as much of it as you can, and we'll both get there in the end. Okay. So this scenario that I'm going to give you is we have a user that enters a given mark. So let's say a mark for school assignment, anything of the sort. And the program is going to output a grade for that given mark based on a grading criteria. Okay. And this can be anything you want it to be, such as, for example, if they get 85 or higher, that's A plus, 80 or higher, A, 75 or higher, B, 70 or higher, C, and then so on and so forth until you get to F, right? So thinking about that from the beginning, right, the first thing that's obvious is we're going to be dealing with both input and output. So for that, we're going to need to include the IO stream module, okay? That's going to help us with that input output. Then we're going to be using our standard namespace. This is probably the bit that you might find yourself forgetting because it's not that straightforward in terms of the flow of the writing, but it's really important. It's just to let the compiler know these are the set of keywords that we're going to be using to define our program. So it just helps out the compiler in understanding our code. Then we're going to need to run at least one function, right? Which is the main function. That's going to return 0 upon successful completion, and that is going to be returned the type of int, of course. So we've declared all that, and we're set to go in writing the specifics of our program. So next, let's think about the data that we're interacting with and how we can store that data. So we're going to be asking for the user to enter marks. So we can define an integer variable called marks. And I guess we'll make that singular, so singular mark. And then we output a message to let the user know. So please enter a mark number. Okay. And then we need to store that information into the mark variable. So we use the cin object. This is when we get to the more interesting bit where we actually analyze that mark. So if mark is higher or equal to 85, then we output a message saying the grade is A plus. Okay. Otherwise, or if else, the mark is equal to or higher than 80, then output a message the grade is A. Okay. And then otherwise, if mark is greater or equal to 75, output grade is B. And that's getting a bit boring, so let's just copy paste that through. Okay, so we can get there a bit faster. Okay, so that's D. And then for the last one, we don't really need to check anything. It's just if we haven't got a grade up to this point, then we just assume whatever is left is going to be F. Okay, so we don't really need to add a condition here. It's just going to be else. Now, I specifically mentioned that I was copying and pasting, and actually, that's a terrible idea. I'll tell you just about why that is in a moment. But first, let's run our code to see that it works. Okay, let's see we did really good on this one, and that person get an A plus. There we go. Let's try and see what happens when we enter 73. Let's see, right? Because it got to B, and this was false. And then the next one was C, and it was higher than 70, so that's why we got left with C. Now, whenever you see yourself copying and pasting, that's generally a bad sign, or a sign that you're writing code which could be much more effective. And I'll tell you just about why. So let's say we wanted to change this message, right? Not the grade itself, but the message. We would have to go in here and type the grade given, let's say we're making this change, and we're wasting time, right? It's inefficient code. What if we make a spelling mistake here, right? And then you have it different across, right? So one way we can avoid this is the following. Let me just show you. We take that message, we make it into just one line because we're always going to be outputting that message. That's the commonality. So take out the commonality between all those scenarios. Okay, and then we can just output the grade. And the grade is the only thing that will change. Now we can define that up here. It's a string. And then in here, rather than outputting the message, we can just set the grade every time. So A plus. So we're not outputting anything. We're just defining that grade depending on the mark. And this is much, much better, as you can see now, because we're repeating ourselves much less now. And if we needed to make a change to the message, we need to just do it in one place. Okay, so that's a bit better, and definitely something that you need to bear in mind when writing your code. How can we isolate the commonality so that you don't end up repeating yourself as much within your code? And again, let's see 73, exactly the same result, just with a different message, all within one line in here. So that's it for program number 3.